not all the time, but most of the time, arguments are not about arriving at truth or fact in the matter. Arguments are about control. What are the best methods of convincing your Jehovah's Witness friends and families they're in a cult? What are the best methods to convince them that they're in a cult? Well, I was thinking about this as I was about to come on live stream here, and I was thinking of one particular story, and it's going to take me a minute to kind of lay it out. But have you ever heard of the anecdote of the smart aleck boy? No, the wise man and the smart aleck boy. So the smart aleck boy, he's always trying to trip up this old man. Let's say it's his father, it's his grandfather, and he's a rebel, right? And he's like, well, how can I make him look really stupid? So he goes out into the woods and he finds this little chickadee, sparrow, or whatever, just a tiny bird. And he picks it up, and it's just this defenseless little thing. And he says, I'm going to take this, I'm going to cover it, I'm going to go up to him and ask, there's a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead? If the wise old man says it's alive or it's dead, I'll just let the thing go and say, see, there was no bird in my hand after all, you foolish old man. And if he says that the bird is alive, the boy would crush the bird until all the life was sucked out of it. And then he would open the hands and be like, see, you foolish old man, the bird is dead. And so he's like, okay, so he goes up to the old man and he plays this out. He asks the old man, I have a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead? And the old man grabs the kid's hand, the smart aleck boy's hand, and says, the bird is in your hands, my son. The bird is in your hands. And that to me is a very poignant illustration of what's going on in JW dynamics a lot of the time when you've got someone who's left and you've got someone who's still in. We're both set on convincing each other. Now, I haven't fully drawn the comparison yet. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but I want to tell another story which kind of drives my point home even further, and I'll kind of tell you why these stories have such a profound impact on me. I remember when I was pioneering, and I was in the deaf group at the time, and there was this cheeky elder that I like to this day. I actually still have a lot of respect for him. And he had a way of putting people on the spot. But he was very clever, and he was friendly about it. You didn't feel like you were suckered into anything, Anyway, I was pioneering. And we went up to this one door. I barely had a grasp on the language. I was barely fluent. I'm not fluent at all anymore. I haven't kept up my sign language. And what was so neat is he immediately, when the householder was asking questions, he immediately, John was his name, he switches positions, so now he's facing me, and he's kind of shoulder to shoulder with the householder, and he's peppering me with questions. And so he's taking, the optics of the whole thing is he's taking sides with the householder and putting me on the spot and seeing if I can defend what I'm saying. And the guy was, like, the householder was already somewhat adversarial, and asking serious questions. But it changed the dynamic because the householder began to befriend John. And of course, John, he didn't throw me under the bus or anything like that. He would just, it would just change the dynamic of the whole thing. And it was like, this now became a community building enterprise. It wasn't us coming to the door to convince this man to our position, even though that is ultimately what we were trying to do, isn't it? Now, these two stories that I tell have had a profound impact on me because, first of all, with the wise old man and the smart aleck boy, something that we have to understand about arguments that arise in these situations is not all the time, but most of the time, arguments are not about arriving at truth or fact in the matter. Arguments are about control. And the original question here, what are the best methods of convincing your JW friends and family that they're in a cult? Well, the best method is to abandon that goal, to convince anyone. And it's weird. It's one of those weird contradictions that when you give up control, you gain it, right? It's actually a Taoist and a Zen preachment. You can't lead people, you can't persuade people to your position when you are when they feel that you are lording it over them, when they feel that you're in a position of authority. The best forms of authority, and now leadership is an actual science in academia. What they're finding is that leadership consists of community building, really. It's different in more volatile parts of the world, dictatorships and so on, where you have people that, it's all about brute strength. But as we know, the brute strength really does ultimately come from civilization and from the populace. And so those sort of dictatorships are very volatile. It may seem like, Kim Jong-un will be the leader forevermore. But when you take the grand historical view, that form of leadership is very temporary. And so, speaking about convincing Jehovah's Witnesses, you need, my most direct answer is you need to abandon that entire pursuit in order to be the most persuasive with them. You have to find a way to have a community building gestalt with them. You want to get away entirely from the idea that we're going to change each other's minds. And very often that's when you begin to persuade people. Now, it is different when you go into public debates, because you're trying to convince the crowd. You're not trying to convince the other person who's commissioned to take up a certain cause. In fact, the chances are even way less likely that you're going to convince him than anybody else, in personal disputes. You're trying to convince the crowd. So the public debates are about rhetoric. They're not about the fact at hand. But you can engage in a community building enterprise with witnesses. It might be slow, but it can be done, and you might never convince them completely on certain things, but you can at least have dialogue with them, and you can have the most amount of effect on them. Hey good people, did you like this video? Well, do yourself a favor and subscribe already. Also, if you love books and want to talk about things sort of unrelated to the Jehovah's Witnesses, be sure to subscribe to my other channel called the Derek London Podcast. Click this little button right here to do that, alright? And I'll see you over there. I'm out. Peace.